Welcome to episode 285 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. It's August 12, 1964. Avellaneda. La Doble Visera. Independiente against Nacional. It's the second leg of the Copa de Campeones de América final. The tournament we now know as the Copa Libertadores. First leg in Montevideo was 0-0. Now the stadium is full. Around 80,000 people. In the 35th minute, Mario Rodríguez scores. Independiente 1, Nacional 0. And with that, Independiente are champions of South America. Argentina has its first Copa Libertadores winner. And the club that will become known as Rey de Copas, the King of Cups, has just found its crown. But how did we get here? Start with Argentina. Football arrives through British schools, railways, ports, clubs, and workers. Buenos Aires becomes one of the great football cities of the world. Argentina and Uruguay built the Rio de la Plata game together, technical, streetwise, proud, competitive, always watching the other side of the river. Then professionalism arrives in Argentina in 1931. We talked about that in episode 199, and also through River's La Máquina story in episode 240. Professionalism changes everything. The great Buenos Aires clubs become deeper, bigger, and more powerful. Boca, River, Racing, Independiente, San Lorenzo, the famous Cinco Grandes, the Big Five. River becomes Los Millonarios and then La Máquina, a football machine of movement, intelligence, rotation, and attack. But Independiente is not River. Independiente is its own thing. Born from workers and shop employees at A la Ciudad de Londres, a department store in Buenos Aires, young players who felt pushed aside by an existing team decided they needed to be independent. That is the origin, Independiente. Officially founded in 1904, with figures such as Aristides Langone and the Georgi brothers in the early story. Then the club moves into Avellaneda. That matters, because Avellaneda becomes one of football's strangest sacred geographies. Racing on one side, Independiente close by. Two giants in one industrial neighborhood. One street can carry two football civilizations. Independiente win amateur titles in the 1920s. They turn red. They become Los Diablos Rojos, the Red Devils. And in the professional era, they win leagues in 1938 and 39, behind one of the great forward lines, Vilariño, De la Mata, Erico, Sastre, Zorrilla. Arsenio Erico remains one of the great scorers in Argentine history. Antonio Sastre is one of those footballers who seems to have played half the sports positions beautifully. So Independiente already have history, but not yet this history. Now the Libertadores. We talked about the prehistory in episodes 134 and 264, the 1948 South American Championship of Champions, the Copa Rio in 1951, and football's growing hunger for intercontinental club meaning. Then, in episode 170, we covered the first Libertadores match, April 19, 1960, Peñarol 7, Jorge Wilstermann 1. The tournament begins with a bang. But the first four editions do not belong to Argentina. Peñarol win 1960, Peñarol again in 61, Santos in 62, and Santos again in 63. Pelé Santos are the defending champions when the 1964 tournament begins. Argentina has great clubs, great players, and great history, but no Libertadores winner. That is the gap Independiente walk into. The men behind the rise matter. Julio Grondona becomes Independiente president in the early 1960s. Yes, that Julio Grondona. The man who will later dominate Argentine football administration for decades. At Independiente, he's still building power. On the bench is Manuel Giúdice, a former player, a serious organizer, not a romantic poster figure, but the kind of coach who gives a team its competitive shape. Independiente win the 1963 Argentine Championship, and that puts them into the 1964 Copa de Campeones. Now the tournament. Group 2. Independiente, Millonarios of Colombia, and Alianza Lima of Peru. The group is messy almost immediately. There is a tragedy behind some of the scheduling. The Estadio Nacional disaster in Lima during the Peru-Argentina Olympic qualifier in May 1964 means Alianza's home matches are moved. So Alianza Independent is played not in Lima, but at Racing's ground in Avellaneda. Football's bureaucracy is never separate from the human world around it. Independiente beat Alianza 4-0. Then Alianza hold them 2-2 in the moved home match. Independiente beat Millonarios 5-1 in Avellaneda. And then comes the strangest line in the group. Millonarios against Independiente is not played. There are differences involving CONMEBOL and Colombian Federation politics, and Independiente refused to travel to Bogotá. But still, the points are awarded to Independiente. No goals allocated. It's very Libertadores. Politics, travel, federations. A walkover that is not quite clean. But Independiente topped the group. So now the semi-final. And because Santos are defending champions, they enter at this stage. Santos, the two-time champions. The club that has given the competition its first global genius. Pelé is not in this tie, but do not misunderstand the opponent. Santos still have Gilmar, Cito, Pepe, Lula on the bench. This is still a monster. First leg Maracanã. Santos against Independiente. 80,000. Santos score twice, but Independiente score 3. Mario Rodríguez, Raúl Benau, and Luis Suarez. Independiente win 3-2 in Rio. A ridiculous result. Second leg, Avellaneda. Independiente win again. 2-1. Mori and Mario Rodríguez. So Santos are out. The holders are gone. The Brazilians who owned the last 2 editions have been eliminated by an Argentine club that refuses to be impressed. Now the final. Nacional of Uruguay. And that is fitting. Argentina's first Libertadores title will have to go through Uruguay. Montevideo first, August 6, Estadio Centenario, 60,000, 0-0. Then Avellaneda, on this day, August 12, La Doble Bisera, 80,000. Mario Rodríguez scores in the 35th minute, and 1-0. That is enough. Independiente are champions. But so what? This is a watershed for Argentine club football. Argentina had already been central to world football, Olympic finalist in 1928 and World Cup finalist in 1930, South American champions many times. River's La Máquina, Boca's popular force, Racing's early greatness, San Lorenzo's style, and Independiente's domestic trophies. But Libertadores is new. It is not the old domestic argument. It is not the Rio de la Plata Cup world. It is continent against continent within South America. Travel, altitude, pressure, noise, referees, politics. And then, for the champion, Europe. Independiente's 1964 win means Argentina is not only producing great football. An Argentine club has conquered the continental machine. It also changes Independiente forever. Before 1964, Independiente are a great Argentine club. After 1964, they are something else. The club of the Copa. They defend the title in 65, and then comes the 1970s dynasty, 72, 73, 74, and 75. 4 Libertadores in a row. No one else has done that. Then come 1984. 7 Libertadores, 7 finals, 7 wins. That is absurd. No club in the competition's history carries that kind of perfect finals mythology. Rey de Copas is not marketing fluff. It's a trophy record turned into identity. This also changes the Argentine image abroad. By the mid-1960s, European football is learning that South American club football is not only talent and romance. It is also war by other means. Hard marking, gamesmanship, atmosphere, hostility, a different emotional temperature. Independiente are part of that tradition. Then Racing against Celtic in 1967 takes the Intercontinental Cup into chaos. Estudiantes against Manchester United in 1968 makes European talk about Argentine football as brilliant, cynical, brutal, clever or intolerable, depending on who's speaking. We just saw an echo of that in the 2026 World Cup Summer 2. Argentina can still make the world argue about where competitive edge ends and excess begins. But that argument didn't begin in 2026, or 1986, or 1966. It is part of the long Argentine football inheritance. The 1964 win arrives 2 years before the 66 World Cup, and that matters. When Argentina go to England in 1966, European eyes already have a growing picture of Argentine football from club competition. Technically serious, emotionally intense, physically hard, politically suspicious of European refereeing, and absolutely unwilling to behave like guests. That is a background to Ratin, to Ramsey's Animals, to El Robo de Silio, which we covered in episode 265. The club game and the national team image feed each other. And finally, Independiente's later contrast is part of the story. The club still has the old name. The stadium is now Libertadores de América Ricardo Enrique Boccini. The trophy room still says everything. But the present is harder. Independiente have not won a domestic league title since the 2002 Apertura, and their last major continental trophy was the 2017 Copa Sudamericana. It's almost 10 years now, and almost a quarter century without a domestic championship. That makes 1964 feel even larger, not because the present cancels the past, but because the past is so enormous that every modern drought is measured against it. Before we go, 3 things to take away from August 12, 1964. First, Independiente were Argentina's first Libertadores champions. Peñarol and Santos had owned the first 4 editions. The 5th finally belonged to Argentina. Second, the route mattered. Independiente survived a messy group, beat defending champion Santos home and away, then took the final from Nacional in Avellaneda. Third, this was the beginning of the Rey de Copas identity. 64, 65, 4 straight in the 70s, then 84. 7 Libertadores finals, 7 victories. On this day in 1964, Independiente beat Nacional 1-0. Mario Rodríguez scored. Argentina had his first Copa Libertadores winner, and the King of Cups began to reign. That is all for episode 285 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Law Sky. I'm grateful for your support and ideas. Some of the emails I get tell me that I'm hitting a nerve with this show. If you hit the subscribe button, rate OTD 5 stars, or share it with all your friends, we can get even more ideas for future episodes. Thank you for helping the show grow. Tomorrow, we go to August 13, 1948, when Sweden won Olympic gold. Stay tuned.